The night I saw him, the air was still, too still for autumn. The forest behind my house whispered softly, as though the trees themselves were holding their breath. I was sitting by the window, the same window I'd stared out of for the last 15 years, since my husband, Thomas, died. His old rocking chair still creaked sometimes when the wind pushed against the porch. I used to imagine it was him, coming home late, boots muddy, humming that low tune he loved so much. But that night, something was different. It wasn't the chair that moved. It was the shadow. I saw it in the corner of my eye. Tall, familiar, slow. A man walking past the line of birch trees, wearing a coat I'd patched 100 times. My heart froze. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. I pressed my hand to the glass, eyes straining through the fog of memory and disbelief. Thomas? The name escaped my lips before I could stop it. The figure didn't turn, just kept walking into the forest, pale light trailing after him like mist. My whole body trembled, and yet something deep inside me pulled me from my chair. I grabbed my lantern, slipped on my old shawl, and stepped into the night. The wind bit at my skin as I crossed the yard, the crunch of leaves echoing louder than my heartbeat. The forest loomed ahead, dark, endless, alive. Every instinct told me to turn back, but love makes fools of even the wise. And I had spent 15 years missing the man who promised he'd never leave me. The deeper I went, the stranger the forest felt. The trees seemed to move, their shadows bending toward me. My lantern flickered, casting ghostly shapes on the ground. And then, through the silver fog, I saw him again, clearer this time. His shoulders, his gait, the way his hands swung slightly as he walked. It was Thomas. It had to be. "Thomas!" I called out, my voice breaking the silence. "Please, wait!" He stopped. Slowly he turned. For a second, I saw his face, gentle, tired, and unbearably sad. Then before I could reach him, he vanished, swallowed by the mist. I dropped to my knees, clutching the lantern as my tears spilled onto the cold earth. I didn't know what to believe. Ghost or dream, madness or miracle, all I knew was that I'd seen him. As I stood there shaking, a faint sound drifted through the trees. A soft hum, the tune he used to whistle when he worked in the fields. It came from deeper in the forest, and against all reason, all fear, I whispered to the night, "I'm coming, Thomas." Then I followed the sound into the darkness, unaware that what I was about to find wasn't just my husband's ghost, but the truth he'd hidden from me all those years ago. The forest was colder the deeper I went. The path twisted beneath my feet, wet with dew and covered in a carpet of brittle leaves. My lantern swung wildly with every hesitant step, casting trembling light on the trunks around me. The tune, that haunting hum, grew fainter, echoing as though it came from the past itself. "Thomas," I whispered again, my voice trembling, "please, let me see you." Only silence answered, thick and heavy. But then I saw it. A faint glimmer on the ground ahead, half buried under moss and roots. I bent down and brushed it with my fingers. It was his pocket watch. The one I had given him on our 10th anniversary. The one he was buried with. I stumbled backward, clutching it to my chest. My heart pounded like a trapped bird. I flipped it open with shaking hands, and froze. Inside, the glass was cracked, but the picture was intact. It was of us, young, smiling, unaware of how fragile forever really is. But below the picture was something new. A small folded note tucked behind the photo. My lantern's flame trembled as I pulled it free and unfolded it. The ink was faded, but still legible. "Forgive me, Nora. I never meant for you to find this place." I gasped, my throat tightening. What place? What had he done? Suddenly, a branch snapped behind me. I spun around, the lantern's glow slicing through the dark. For a split second, I saw movement, a shadow, quick and silent. My breath caught in my chest. "Who's there?" No answer, only the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of an owl. I pressed on, heart racing. I couldn't stop now. Every part of me screamed to turn back, but the love and the guilt pulled me forward. Then, through the mist, I saw it. A small wooden cabin, half collapsed and swallowed by vines. It wasn't there before, I was sure of it. The roof sagged, the door hung crookedly, and yet something about it felt painfully familiar. I approached slowly, the smell of earth and decay heavy in the air. The moment I touched the door, the humming stopped. Silence. I pushed it open. Inside, dust and darkness, a few broken chairs, a table covered in cobwebs, and on the wall, a photograph nailed into the wood. It was Thomas, standing beside a young woman I didn't recognize. She looked gentle, her hand on his arm, her smile soft. My stomach twisted. I stepped closer, holding up my lantern. Behind them, written faintly in chalk on the wall, was a single word: Eleanor. I had never heard that name before. My hands shook as I backed away, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. The floor creaked beneath me. And then a whisper from the darkness. "You shouldn't have come here, Nora." The voice was deep, familiar. My lantern fell from my grasp and shattered on the ground. The flame flickered, casting one last burst of light, and in that moment, I saw him standing in the doorway. Thomas, or what was left of him. I wanted to scream, but the sound died in my throat. There he was, my husband, Thomas, standing in the doorway, his figure shimmering like smoke, his eyes holding that same gentle sadness I remembered from years ago. For a moment, it felt as though time folded in on itself, dragging me back to when he'd kiss my forehead before leaving for work, promising he'd be home by supper. Only, this time, his promise had brought me here, into the shadows of a forgotten forest. "Thomas," I whispered, my voice trembling, "is it really you?" He didn't move, didn't speak. His outline flickered like a candle about to go out. I stepped closer, afraid that if I blinked, he'd disappear. His lips parted. "You shouldn't have followed me, Nora." Tears blurred my vision. "I saw you, the light, the song, the watch. You called me here." Thomas shook his head slowly. "Not I. It's the past that called you." A chill swept through the cabin. I wrapped my arms around myself, the cold seeping into my bones. "Who was she?" I asked, pointing toward the photo on the wall. "Eleanor. Who is she, Thomas?" His face changed. Pain crossed his ghostly features, deep and raw. "She was my mistake." I stared at him, waiting, heart pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. "I met her long before the fire, when I was working by the river. She lived in a village nearby,
alone, ill and helpless. I only wanted to help her, but one night I stayed too long. One kindness turned into something I couldn't undo. The words cut through me like shards of glass. My knees weakened, and I sank onto the nearest chair. "You betrayed me." He didn't deny it. His silence was confession enough. "I wanted to tell you," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "But before I could, the fire came. I went back to that cabin to end it all, to tell her goodbye. But she'd already gone. The storm hit. Lightning struck the trees. I never made it out." I gasped. "That's how you died?" He nodded slowly. "The fire didn't just take my life, Nora. It took my chance to make things right." I covered my face with trembling hands, tears streaming down my cheeks. All those years I'd mourned him, built shrines in his memory, whispered his name to the stars, and he died hiding a secret. "Why now, Thomas? Why show yourself after all these years?" He took a step forward, his form growing fainter. "Because I can't move on until you forgive me. The forest binds me here, every whisper, every shadow. It's the echo of what I did. You came because your heart heard what my soul has been crying for decades." My heart shattered at his words. I wanted to hate him, to curse him for what he'd done. But as I looked into those sorrowful eyes, the same eyes that had once watched over me with love, I saw something else, remorse, so deep it seemed to consume him. I rose slowly, my old bones aching, my tears drying into salt on my cheeks. "Thomas," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "you broke my heart once. Don't let this forest break it again." He stepped closer, and for a moment I could almost feel the warmth of his hand brushing against mine. Not ghostly, not cold, but tender. "Then forgive me," he whispered. I swallowed hard, my breath trembling. "I forgive you," I said softly, "not for what you did, but because holding on has hurt me more than losing you ever did." A light began to glow around him, faint at first, then brighter, like dawn piercing the fog. The air grew warmer, the cabin quieter. He smiled, that gentle, familiar smile I thought I'd never see again. "Thank you, my Nora," he murmured. "You've set me free." And with that, he began to fade. The light shimmered, the forest seemed to sigh, and he was gone. Only the silence remained, and the faint smell of smoke and wildflowers. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway, feeling both heavier and lighter all at once. My heart hurt, but it beat stronger than it had in years. When I finally turned to leave, the photo on the wall was gone. Only the outline remained, burned faintly into the wood. Two figures, side by side, hand in hand. When I stepped out of the forest, the morning sun was rising, soft gold spilling across the treetops, as though the world itself was exhaling after a long, dark night. For a moment, I stood there, the damp earth beneath my feet, the sound of birds beginning their song. I had entered this forest chasing a ghost, but I was leaving with something far more precious: peace. The air smelled of pine and smoke, faint and distant. My body ached, my lantern was broken, and my heart felt strangely alive.
I looked back once more at the path I had taken, half expecting to see Thomas standing there, but all I saw was the light, soft and warm, wrapping the trees like a final goodbye. By the time I reached my cottage, the world had fully awakened. The neighbor's dog barked, a child's laughter echoed down the road, and the scent of bread baking carried on the breeze. Ordinary life, waiting for me like an old friend. I sat on the porch steps, my hands still trembling. The pocket watch, the one I found in the forest, was warm in my palm. I opened it again, expecting to see the same photo, the same note. But the note was gone. In its place was a single line, freshly written in a neat hand I knew by heart. Love survives what life cannot. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they weren't heavy. They fell softly, like rain that nourishes instead of destroys. I whispered into the wind, "Goodbye, my love." The days that followed were quiet but full. I began tending the garden again, patching the holes in the roof, baking for the neighbors who came to check on me. And every evening I'd light a small candle by the window, not for grief anymore, but gratitude. Thomas's ghost no longer haunted me. The forest no longer called my name. What remained was a stillness I had never known, the peace that comes after forgiving not just another soul, but your own. And though I am old now and the nights grow long, I sometimes feel a soft warmth beside me, as though someone is sitting quietly in the chair near the window. I smile, close my eyes, and whisper, "I followed you into the forest, Thomas, but I found my way back to myself." And that, I think, is where love truly lives.